All right. Welcome to a live episode of Search News You Can Use with me, Dr. Marie Haynes. This is something I have not done before, gone live in my network in the search bar. So we'll see how it goes. I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to screen share. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about the Quality Rater Guidelines, one of my favorite topics to talk about. Google's Quality Rater Guidelines have updated recently in January. The last couple of years when the Rater Guidelines updated, there really wasn't that much worth talking about, but this time there is. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in these guidelines, and so we're going to go through that live. We're going to talk about filler content, about the importance of main content. Filler content is something that if you're a recipe site owner, you're really going to want to pay attention to. And also stuff on expired domains, on scaled content abuse. There's so much that has been added. The most interesting thing I think that was added to the Rater Guidelines is stuff on paraphrasing. So we're going to talk about that as well. If you are here with me live in this webinar, I see as we're doing this right now, we've got quite a few of you here. There's a chat area. Maybe if one of you could just say hello in the chat so then I know it's working. Oh, look at that. Several people are typing. Okay, excellent. So it's working. You're welcome to ask questions as I go along. And if I don't cover your question, then at the end of this discussion, I'm going to have a whole Q&A section. I'm happy to stay as long as it takes to answer your questions as far as I can on the QRG. So let me also say that if you're here on the call with me at the end of this call, before we go into the Q&A, I'm going to give you a code, a discount code, where you can buy my new book. Some of you know, some of you have bought my previous versions of the Quality Rater Guidelines checklist. I know some of you use it for site audits, and I'm amazed when I go to conferences and see people say, you know, I use your book all the time. I really love that you find it helpful. I completely rewrote the whole thing because there are so many changes in these Quality Rater Guidelines. And so that book will be going on for sale at $59.99. And those of you who are on the call will get a 25% discount. And if you're a Search Bar Pro member, part of the private community, which I'll share a little bit more about that in a minute, you get the book for free. So more on that soon. So let's jump right in and talk about the Rater Guidelines. Before I start screen sharing, I want to share a fair amount about why we care, why it matters. When these guidelines first came out, they've been around for many years. They were hidden. They weren't something that Google would share with people. And in fact, there was one year when the guidelines got leaked. I don't know how many of you remember this, but they got leaked and I had a leaked copy. And I actually went out and bought the domain name leakedqualityraterguidelines.com. And then it turns out that everybody who was posting stuff from the leaked guidelines got a little note from Google legal team saying take it down. And then at one point, Google said, you know what, why don't we share these with everybody? And it really makes sense. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to go and make your websites better. It's not like that's what Google wants. They want us to make high quality websites. So the guidelines are written for these people called quality raters. And Google, you know what, I'm going to find a link and I'll put it here in the chat. There's a document that, you know what, I don't have it. I'll have to put it to another time. There's a document that Google published, a PDF, and somebody can find it. It starts with SQRG, and it's a PDF that Google published all about the Rater Guidelines, what the raters are for, and there is so much information. I would encourage you to read that alongside the guidelines themselves. And they told us, now the last time Google published this, which has been a few years, that there are 16,000 quality raters. Now that number may have changed. Thank you, Himal. That looks like, is it the one? Yes, I think that is the one. 16,000 quality raters, that's a lot of people. These are people that are not directly employed by Google, but they're contracted out through companies. And you may have heard, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, that Google ended their contract with one of these companies. And, a lot of people speculated, well, maybe it's because now they don't need people to rate the quality of search results. Maybe they're doing it all with AI. There's a fantastic article that Don Anderson wrote on Search Engine Land that talks about how eventually quality raters may be replaced with AI, which is kind of a scary thought. But it turns out that AI can, in some cases, do a better job than humans. But these guidelines are written for these 16,000 people, or however many they have now. And what they are guidelines on rating search results. So Google actually tells us in that document that I just mentioned that this is how it works. Let's say a Google engineer wants to implement a new change to search. And they have this idea that, if we implement this algorithm, it's going to make the quality of search results better. Well, what they'll do is they'll give that to the quality raters. They'll say, here's Google's current list of search rankings and they have a set of queries that they'll give to the quality raters. And here's the new system with the engineers' changes put in it. And the raters go through and we'll look at some of this. There's a lot more in my book on the different scales that the raters use. They're rating page quality, which is synonymous with EEAT, and they're rating needs met, which is so important, how well this meets the needs of searchers. And there's all sorts of questions on, how would a rater know that? There's a lot more in my book on SEO in the Gemini era on that, and I'm happy to answer questions again in the Q&A section on how that works. But what happens is, as the raters are rating, so they're saying, this is more helpful or this side's more helpful, then let's say, so then that produces a score. We learned in the DOJ versus Google trial testimonies that score is called an IS score, information satisfaction. And the IS score, if it's higher on this side, it means that the changes that the engineers suggested actually resulted in higher quality results. And so Google balances, well, the new change, maybe it's going to make the search results slower. And, they weigh all of the different factors. Maybe it's going to cost a lot more. And they weigh everything with the goal of making the quality higher without ruining the speed at which search results come to users. And so the raters are providing this score. Now, something never sat well with me in this whole process. I don't know how many engineers there are at Google. I mean, I'm sure there's quite a few, but 16,000 quality raters. They're paid, I believe, last I heard, on average, I think it's $15 an hour. Imagine, I just did some really quick napkin math. If they worked 15 hours a week at $15 an hour, I believe you're looking at something like $3 million a week to have these people rate results. That's a lot for Google search engineer changes. Well, then I read in, again, the DOJ versus Google trial, the Douglas Ord testimony. That link is in the search bar. If you cannot find it, reach out to me. I'll you know what? I'm going to get it right now because I know I have that one handy. Because you probably have not read the Douglas Ord testimony, and it's worth setting aside some time to, like, several hours to read it. I talk all the time about the Pandu Nayak testimony, but this one talks a lot about how the machine learning systems work in search. And these machine learning systems, they are trying to produce a good, high-quality algorithm. Well, at some point in this testimony, Douglas Ord talks about two sets of results. Remember I said there's the current results, and then there's the one a new engineer wants or an engineer wants to implement. Well, what they talk about, Gagan said the reported contract for quality raters was around 84 million. And that's just some of the quality raters. Like, it's a lot that they spend on these quality raters. And so the testimony talks about two sets of results that are shown to the raters. One they called frozen results, and that's the current search algorithm, I believe. It doesn't say that 100% for sure, but the other one is called retrained results, and that's what kind of blew my mind, because throughout the Pandu-Nayak testimony and the Douglas Ord testimony, they talk repeatedly about how Google search is run by primarily by machine learning systems. I don't know how much to get into because we want to get into the rater guidelines, but they are trained on click signals. They're trained on a multitude of signals where the goal is to be producing high quality, helpful results. So the quality raters are not just looking at changes that a human engineer wants to implement. They're also looking at what the machine learning system wants to implement as a new algorithm. And that's why many years ago, Google employee Ben Gomes said in a CNBC article that the rater guidelines are not Google's algorithm, but they show where they want the algorithm to go. And so if we focus on understanding the rater guidelines, and even in Google's documentation on creating helpful content, they talk about how the rater guidelines is something that if we can align with the rater guidelines, then we align, they say, conceptually with what Google's algorithms are trying to reward. And I know SEOs are really good at pointing out areas where it doesn't work, and that's because it's learning. It's machine learning systems, and so they're getting better and better at learning what to produce, but they're not perfect yet. So when there are changes to the rater guidelines, we pay attention, because many years ago, well, not many years ago, 2018, you remember the MEDIC update that happened August 1st, 2018. That was a core update. And in July of 2018, Google did an update to the quality rater guidelines. And they didn't make many changes, but they added 3 words in one part: safety of users. And I thought, well, that's kind of an odd thing to just add. Like, why bother rewriting these guidelines just to add safety of users? And sure enough, with the next core update, we saw all these changes related to EAT, where medical content that was written lacking medical EAT, that was before the second E was added for experience, was demoted. And so when there's a change in the rater guidelines, it means that Google wants to be training their systems to be able to recognize these things algorithmically. So that's the whole reason why we pay attention. Before I move on to the actual guidelines themselves, if you have a question about anything I've just said, feel free to pop it in the chat, because I want to be sure that everybody kind of understands what's happening here. And let me get the guidelines up. And we don't need the audio. All right. Oh, it looks like it's working. What I did was I went through the guidelines and highlighted everything that's changed. I started off doing it with Gemini and AI Studio, and it was good, but it actually turns out it was just faster for me to put the 2 versions. I'm going to put the rater guidelines in the chat. Here is the current version of the rater guidelines, and you can find the previous version on archive.org. And so if you want to compare, just like I did. Now, we're not going to go through every single change because we would be here for multiple hours. But the things that I've highlighted here are the things that have changed. So some of them I don't care so much for. This is just something about using, some browsers will block ads. The raters are instructed to look at ads. I remember years ago, so I don't know how many of you remember in the Moz Q&A forums, a gentleman named Eagle, who was one of my mentors. And he said to me, I don't ever turn your ad blocker off. He says, because I want you to see the experience that users see. And so raters are meant to look at pages with ad blockers off. Ads are important in terms of user experience. We'll get to ads most likely in a minute, although I'm not sure if much has changed in terms of ads. There's a lot in my workbook on that. So if you have not read the guidelines, like there's a lot in here that's important. They added this line here about generative AI. Pardon me. Generative AI is a type of machine learning model that can take what it's learned from the examples it has been provided. Now, the examples it has been provided. Let's talk about machine learning. I forgot to mention something very, very important. I'm going to search through. This is my favorite line of the rater guidelines, is that the ratings are used to improve search results by providing examples of helpful and unhelpful results for different searchers. This is how machine learning works, is we give examples of what's good and of what's not so good. And so now let's say a quality rater visits your site, and you can tell that. You can go to GA4, you can look in the referrals section, and if you look for Rater Hub, you probably have had raters visit your site. It means absolutely nothing to your site. They are just very quickly looking at every single site in the SERPs that they've been given and very quickly rating them in terms of page quality needs met. That doesn't change the ranking of your website. It just helps provide Google, like let's say some spammer created a website that, and they faked EEAT. We're going to talk about how people did that in just a minute. And you can see that like this is not a site that should be ranking here. It's very low quality. That would get flagged as an unhelpful result. And there's also a place where they talk about how the raters use a grid and document oh, where is the grid? That's not the one I was looking for. Here we go. A page quality grid to record your observations about the page quality characteristics of the landing page. They're basically saying, here's what's good about this page, or here's what's bad about this page. And then I believe that that's used by AI as well to help create an algorithm that does a better job at predicting what is helpful or not. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. Let's get back to our recording, or our highlighting here. All right, so it's new in the guidelines that Google said what generative AI is. They are not against generative AI. There is a document that Google published that talks about their recommendations for AI. I'll give you that to AI use Google guidelines, because Google is not against using AI. In fact, if you can use AI to make your content better, then go for it. And I use AI all the time. I really love using Notebook LM. I'll take something like, actually, I used Notebook LM as I was writing my Quality Raters book. It didn't write the whole book for me, but I would say things like, write a description of what's important about experience based on what's in this book. And then it helps me. I might edit what it gave me, but it's not, it's fine to use AI. So, but obviously there are times where people use AI where it is not good. This was changed, and I thought this was interesting. They talk about the common uses of beneficial pages. Every page on the web, in order to be high quality, has to be beneficial for searchers. This used to say to allow users to post questions for other users to answer, and they changed it to people. Now that just might be, sometimes they make changes in the rater guidelines, they add punctuation, they just randomly kind of change a few words. I think this is significant. Who in the chat, I would be very impressed if any of you could mention, there is a project that Google's coming out with that this is very relevant to. And if anybody can get it, I'll shout you out. I'll be very, very impressed. It's not Project Astra. If you've been reading my notes, you'll know. Somebody is typing. Because soon it's not going to be just people who are rapidly navigating the web. There's going to be bots. Yeah, you almost got it there. It's Project Mariner is what it's called. And I encourage you to look that up. If you're reading my notes every week, I've been writing about it a fair amount. Project Mariner is an AI agent that will, and this is a Google thing that is happening. You might have heard of ChatGPT's or OpenAI's operator. It's the same as that. Although I think Google's often, they seem like they're slower in getting things out. I think they have more responsibility to move safely because this is going to change things. Soon we will have AI agents that use our browser just like they are our employees. I picture that when I publish my newsletter, I can create an agent via Project Mariner that will proofread my newsletter, go ahead and put it in the search bar, go ahead and open up my ConvertKit, write an email for me to send out to you, and then present it to me for approval before it goes ahead and hits send. And this will save so much time. We're already seeing agents in use if you have used Google's deep research. You can only get deep research if you pay for Gemini Advanced, which I think is worth paying for. You'll see all sorts of people say, well, I think ChatGPT is better. I have not used ChatGPT's deep research because that's part of the $200 a month program, which I haven't pulled the trigger on yet. But Gemini Advanced does deep research, which goes out and it doesn't just find information on websites. It browses the website, and then from what it reads, it determines where to go next on the web and can produce this research on many, many things. So anyways, I'm going too long on this. This is not our biggest change, but our websites need to be, it's interesting that they changed it to people, because we still, even though machines and agents are going to be browsing our websites, what Google needs is websites that are written for people, is what I'm trying to say in a very long way. There's a ton in here on YMYL. If you're not sure about whether your topics are YMYL, there's a load of stuff. If you just Control F for YMYL in the guidelines, there's a lot of guidance in here. All right, let's get to the next change. The good stuff's coming, I promise. So I'll just point out this is not new, but the raters are given two scales to rate pages on. One is overall page quality. In earlier versions of the quality rater guidelines, page quality was actually called EAT. They replaced multiple versions of, like, where it said EAT with page quality several years ago. So EAT, and a lot of people, we've been focused on author bios. Your author's still important, and in the book we go through a lot about understanding whether your author has the EAT to write things. It's not the author bio that's important, though. There needs to be connections that say that, the person who created this content is qualified to write this, or at least for the subject matter is important. And there are always questions on EAT. So if you have questions about that, again, in the Q&A time, we'll do that. So page quality, main content. We are going to talk about main content in a minute. Whenever you see MC in the guidelines, it stands for main content. And Google wants to see that the main content was made with effort. There was something I saw posted on social that Gary Ish was from Google was at I think it was a Aleda's event in London, and said that this year Google is really going to be focusing on originality and effort. Yes, as well, Renee. Effort is and the extent to which a human being actively worked to create satisfying content. That's not new. That's been in there for a while, but you'll see that there's some new stuff that we're going to get to soon. To go through the full amazingness of the rater guidelines would take forever. I do want to get to the new stuff. Let's keep going. Reputation. In my book, I link to a GPT that I created that'll help you brainstorm on building your reputation. If you don't have the reputation for your topics, you can build it. I used to be a veterinarian. Why am I talking to you about Google algorithms? Because I built a reputation for it. And so anybody can build a reputation. Okay. Please tell me that there are highlighted stuff. There we go. Okay. I'm not going to focus. The next little bit is about deception. I think that most of you who are, did you practice talking to animals about SEO first? My pets hear a lot of me talking about SEO. We won't go there though. I'll start sounding kind of crazy. They heard a lot of this talk too, as my cats know a lot about the Radar guidelines now. There is a lot about deception, and if your page is created just to make money and your primary purpose is not to help people, which I know is a really tough thing to judge, but this really, I believe, deception and deceiving users, Google's mostly talking about really nefarious stuff, which I'm sure those of you in the chat are not doing. Now, here's where we get to some interesting stuff. Remember, we talked about MC, the main content. Here are, if any of these criteria apply, the page is to be given the rating of lowest in terms of quality. It used to say the main content is copied, auto-generated, or otherwise created without adequate effort. Now it says little to no effort. This is new, little to no originality. I'm going to repeat this multiple times because I know that some of you who are in this chat or in this call have this issue on your website. You have content that is original in terms of words. If I took your content and I copied and pasted it and put it into search, nobody else has written those words. However, there's very little that has been added to the body of knowledge that exists in the web. And I know it's kind of hard to grasp, like, how would Google know? Let me say that if I could take a piece of content and put it into ChatGPT or Gemini and say, what in this content is original to this piece of content that a reader could not find elsewhere on the web, those tools can tell me. Now, you know that when I do a search, Google's not going to be running every single page through Gemini to tell me what's original. However, have you tried to get content indexed lately? When you get your content indexed, it gets tokenized. What that means is Google converts it into vectors. And if this is all Greek to you, there's a ton of stuff in the search bar paid area. We've been talking for forever about vectors. I love talking about vectors. Your content gets transferred into vectors, into tokens. And so as it gets indexed, that's what happens, is Google learns to extract the things that are important. I think if I can ask ChatGPT if your content is original, the Google's guidance on helpful content, the very first point is whether it adds its original research, insight, if it's an insightful, and so those things are what it takes to rank now. And this is why many of the sites that were impacted by the helpful content update, they were decent sites. They were good sites that if I looked at that site, I could learn stuff. However, there are hundreds of other sites that talked on that same subject. So it says, and the main content adds no value compared to similar pages on the web. This is something that is extremely important. And Renee says, I think that a recipe site can suffer from this even after trying really hard. And I thoroughly agree with you, Renee. And there's more that is coming. I'm sure you've seen the bit about filler content. It is not good to be a recipe blogger right now. And I think the reason is I'm really hesitating in how I say this because if you know me, you know that I love recipe bloggers. I think they're some of the most amazing creative people, but also I use Gemini to get my recipes. This weekend, Gemini taught me how to make buns using, is it called Tazong? I never heard of it before. It's the way that in Asian recipes, you can make this thing with flour and water and mix it all together before you put it in the bread. They were so fluffy. And I know I could learn that from a website, but you know, I'm using AI for all of my recipes. Now, I am ahead of the curve in terms of using AI for things like that, but more and more people are going to do this. And and so I really feel for recipe bloggers. And Gagan says also this originality part aligns with having more net new content on the web so that Google can further train Gemini to make it better. Yes, I hear people saying, well, we're going to run out of things for AI to train on. And now let's say there's a new Google update. What incentive do I have to write about I just wrote about the December core update if AI is just going to take my stuff and give it as an answer? Well, there are things that I can add from my experience. There's things that only I can see that AI at this point can't determine. I have all of these clients that I can say, oh, this type of site was impacted, this and that. And me doing that puts me in the AI answer and improves my brand. If you ask ChatGPT or Gemini, who can I consult with about Google algorithm updates, they generally recommend me along with other people. And that's because I'm creating this original and insightful content. The Rater guidelines say throughout the place that I would encourage you to do a Control F and search for known for. You need to be known for your topic if you're going to be producing content on the web. Xavier, do we know if Google treats news sites and the rest of the internet the same way? Yeah, well, okay. So there are different algorithms for news. However, if you run a news site and we're going to get to paraphrasing. You know what? I'm going to come back to that question, Xavier, because it talks extensively about paraphrasing. Renee, do you have any thoughts on niches that will thrive under this? Yeah, okay, if you have a hobby, I was learning to make worm tea. That sounds really bizarre, but my husband and I do composting, and we have worms in the compost. And you can take the worm poop turns into soil, and you can use it as fertilizer. And I learned that you can make worm tea out of kind of like steeping this worm poop. I won't get into all the details, and then use that as fertilizer for your plants. Well, I did deep research with Gemini, and Gemini gave me this massive list of really cool websites of people who had pictures of here's how I made the little tea bag. Here's here's the container that I put it in. All of these things. I must have spent hours going through these websites. Now, I didn't purchase anything through affiliate links, but that's kind of how websites work. I do think that if you are in an area where you have skills that and you have knowledge that the web is not currently filled with, then you can thrive under this. This originality also affects sites focusing on historical facts. I did a site review recently for a site that was used by many students because it was like an encyclopedia type site, and it was devastated by core update after core update. The site had no quality issues as far as I could see. It's just that it was its main point was to focus on information that already existed on the web. So if your unique selling point is that you're good at putting information together, it's not enough. You need to be original. If the algo is different for different niches, there has to be different guidelines for scoring sites. Well, keep in mind that what the machine learning systems are trying to do, and it's not just one system, is they are trying to find examples of here's good content, here's good or bad content. So let's say I show the guidelines thousands of examples of truly original content in multiple different niches, and I show the guidelines, I show the machine learning systems that, and I show them examples of content that is just regurgitated from the rest of the web. I think that the machine learning systems can pick up the qualities of original content. I think, again, if I can ask ChatGPT, is there anything original in this that doesn't exist on the rest of the web, it can pick that up. So it's not like the algorithm knows every single niche. It's learning the signals of what tends to make something original and helpful. One of the things I think works really well is statistics, is research. If you can do a survey, if you can do a study of some sort, then that's the type of thing that can be considered original. All right, we're going to do more on originality because that's just the start. And If you're already upset, you're going to be more upset in a few minutes. Okay, and also recently AI overviews showing side-by-side comparisons, yeah, for A versus B product reviews. I posted about that in my notes last week, right? That you're seeing AI overviews now with products in them. I do work with a site that is an affiliate site that makes recommendations on products, and there's almost no reason to go to this site now, unless Google is pulling from that site, which they're not. They were impacted. They came to me because they were impacted by certain updates. So let's say you have an affiliate website and you're writing about, here's what's great about dishwashers. I'm saying dishwashers because mine just broke. You can get all the reviews on the web, you can get all these things, but like Google's already got that information. You need to be providing something that people would want to see even if they have read what's already on the web. There's a patent, let's see if I can find it here, a Google patent on something called information gain. And that's something that I would encourage you to read, where Google says they can give a score to documents that says, well, if a reader has already read certain documents on this topic, how much would they stand to gain from reading this document as well? And so that's something that I think we're going to see more and more of, is the importance of having unique content. Okay, let's go. We're going to skip through the harmful, misleading, untrustworthy. There's lots we could talk about here, but that's not what I want to focus on in this talk. Again, this is new, this part that I highlighted here about deceptive page purpose. I don't know why they added this new thing. It was very, very similar to what was there before, so they may have just been clarifying some stuff. And they give some examples. Page with deliberately inaccurate information to promote products. So there must be some things that are going on in terms of, there's always different people trying to run different scams. One of the things that I did want to talk about here is, is these sections here, let me move it up there, relate to people who are trying to fake EAT. And I did not think it was possible to fake EAT. And some of you might remember probably about 2 years ago or so, I put on Twitter, on X, this example of like this great site that was demonstrating experience. And it was an HVAC site that had like pictures from inside their factory and all these different things. And it turns out that it was an elaborate fake. And it fooled me because I'm trained to look at EAT just like Google did after reading, studying these guidelines for so long. What they did was they made fake LinkedIn profiles. They added a Yelp profile. They took pictures and they used Photoshop to put their logo on these pictures. Like they did all sorts of things to try to fake that they were a legitimate business. And I believe they're not ranking anymore. I haven't checked them recently. But it says, a website might claim to have a physical brick and mortar store, but if in fact only exists online. That's significant. I have seen multiple times that sites that have been impacted by core updates often get outranked by sites with physical stores. And it makes sense. Let's say you sell supplements online and you're getting outranked by a business that actually has physical stores where they sell supplements. Well, those physical stores, they're dealing with customers every day. They know the questions that customers have. They have real world experience that you're not going to replicate. I saw some people saying, okay, well, maybe now the way to rank is to add a shop to I had one, well, I won't tell that example. I want to talk about how clients wanted to spam, but, and I don't want to, try to think of ways to manipulate, because Google's getting better and better at determining who is legitimate. And here's another one, a web page or website with fake owner or content creator profiles. Super interesting, right? We've had all of these discussions on whether author bios matter for EAT. And I remember many years ago, I worked with a site owner and they wanted to create these fake authors and link them to like actual scholar pages from authors, and it didn't work well for them. But I'm sure some people are getting away with this type of thing. I would highly encourage you on your website to have actual pictures of you, of your team, of your facilities, if that is appropriate. And so, yes, Gagan, and if Gagan says, I also guess Google might be assuming if someone is selling products or services, it's in their best interest to provide the best possible info about their products or services. So you really, really want to make it clear that you are legitimate people, that you're not just some kid in their basement who created a website for the sake of making money. And I would highly encourage you to, and I know like it's not, there are negatives to having your face and your name online. But if you want to be selling things online, if you want to be advising people online, then Google wants to see that you are legitimately a real person. Xavier, there was a recent comment from John Mueller about the fact that people can spot SEO-made content creator bios. And so, yeah, I mean, if I can look at a page and most of the time I can see whether it's fake or not, then I think Google can determine those patterns as well. If you're interested in more about this, I wrote an article on Spam Brain, which you can find. Just Google my name and Spam Brain, and to talk about how Google can find the patterns that tend to come up with different spam tactics. Factually inaccurate and deceptive information about creator expertise. And that's something I see all the time, especially in a lot of the sites that were impacted by the helpful content update. Not all of them, but a lot of them were like let's say it's a gardening website and they'd be like, I've been gardening for 20 years. And I understand why we did it. I think I even preached to do that, you know, to tell users about your experience. But what matters is that others are talking about your experience. And the rater guidelines, again, if you look up known for, I'm not going to do it now, but it's in the guidelines so many times. They talk about how The Knot is known for weddings. The Onion is known for satire and for humor. And then I wrote a blog post recently where I encourage you to go to Gemini and say, what is this website known for? What am I known for? It doesn't always know everybody, but if you are not known by the language models, then it might be that you need to do more to get you out there and to get, and I'm not just talking about like, it's good to make a LinkedIn page. It's good to maybe even guest post, not for the links, but like if I write a post on Search Engine Land, there's a strict editorial guidelines there, and you know, not just anybody can do that. And so that speaks somewhat to my expertise for SEO. But really, you want to be doing stuff that gets other people to talk about you, which is extremely difficult, especially if you're not creating something that's original. I'm not going to focus too much on this. Pages with deceptively designed buttons or links. We've all seen those. I don't know why Google hasn't dealt with this yet, but we've seen those pages where an ad says download and you click on an ad instead. And I'm sure that's not your issue. But this can be, and I think this is really important, pages with a misleading title or a title that has nothing to do with the content on the page. And they say it's because people feel tricked. I think it's because the title is insanely important when it comes to AI understanding your page. I saw Joy Hawkins did a study recently where she experimented with making super long titles. And there's pros and cons to that. Like, you want your users to be able to see your title, and you know, I don't think you want to confuse your users, but it turns out that putting a lot of keywords in the title tag still actually can influence rankings. I'll tell you one of my things that I've written in multiple ones of my books that I like to do. I'm going to give you, this is probably going to be like one of the best tips of the webinar right here, is to take your article when you're about to publish it, give it to Gemini. I like to use Gemini and AI Studio. I like the thinking models. I think that they do best at this. And say, what is the main, most important thing that's in this article? What are 3 micro intents of the person who's going to be reading this article. Then write me 10 lines of under, I think it is 160 characters is what Google recommends for a title tag, I think. Write me 10 lines that include all of those. And Gemini will give you some title tags to think on. Often the AI title tags have a colon in them. I often like to take that out, but that's something the title tag is very, very important. Regarding creator expertise, I doubt that might be a reason LinkedIn Pulse is getting a lot of visibility. Yeah, I think the reason why LinkedIn gets visibility is because people click on it. I think it's related to authority, and because it sends a lot of click signals that people tend to engage with it. I saw there was something about a website that was impacted by helpful content system where it was Dungeons and Dragons content, and the content was fantastic, except that if nobody was clicking on it from search because there were multiple sites that had the same information, then that's going to send signals that it's not the best one to have in search. And I think Google will fix this LinkedIn thing. I think we'll see less and less LinkedIn posts ranking. There you go. So yeah, Xavier, you're talking about that case that I just talked about. Okay, let's keep going here. We haven't even got to the good stuff yet, and I've been rambling on. I'm not going to focus too long on this. Expired domain abuse really surprised me to see this in here, because this is something that Google's been talking about for like decades. I'll tell you the story of back in the SEO chat forums days. That's where I learned SEO, starting in 2008. There was a gentleman named Fathom who has passed away now, but he talked repeatedly about using expired domains to rank on Google, and it worked so well. He actually convinced me. This is why I'm kind of laughing here, because he convinced me. I made my own little PBN, my private blog network of expired domains. I bought up the Jewish Students Association website in Ottawa and redirected it to my website. And then I felt so sick about it because it just felt icky that I took it all down. But what they're talking about here, it's okay. What a lot of people do is a business might buy a competitor's business or somebody who's gone out of business and redirect that domain to your site. If it makes sense for business reasons, that's not what Google's talking about here. It's really attempts to manipulate. And you see, they say like casino-related content on a former elementary school site. What I do find interesting, I'm working with one site right now where their main competitor has bought up some domains that are related to theirs, but really they're not their domain. And I think that they will suffer because of this. Did you get a lot of emails like, hi dear, hi DA opportunity? Yeah. Domain authority is something, I mean, we know that domain authority is something that Moz made up to try to replicate PageRank. And PageRank doesn't even really exist like it used to exist now. Like the whole systems are wildly different. So it drives me crazy how much, especially when new people come to learn SEO, how much emphasis there is put on links and domain authority. So let's see here. Many forget Google was once a registrar as well. Yeah, you could buy domains on Google. And so there's a patent. I remember, I think Bill Slosky talked about it, where Google can look at your whois information. They can do all sorts of things to determine if a domain was used for other purposes in the past. And Gagan said, yeah, expired domain abuse is mentioned in the March 2024 core update announcement from Elizabeth Tucker. I did not know that, actually. Well, so there's more coming here. I'm going to leave this on the page while I read the next question, because this is something we want to talk about. Blake, what are your thoughts on new companies that bought their domain not realizing it existed before and created their own company 5 to 10 years ago, and it wasn't their intention to capitalize on an expired domain? I really think I have not seen a situation where I felt like Google got it wrong. I don't think you need to worry. Like, they're really talking about attempts, like strong attempts to manipulate, and there are multiple signals. It's not like it's just that one signal. So if you bought this expired domain that like used to be a museum and now you're trying to make it, redirect to your site, that's not a big deal. Google will just eliminate the signals from that. But if you also have many other signals that align with what people tend to do when they spam, then I get a little bit more concerned. One thing that I have seen multiple times is sometimes people buy a domain and they can't get it to rank anywhere, and they set up Search Console and see that they have a manual action on this domain for pure spam. And if that happens, you can reply to the manual action and say, hey, I just bought this domain. I didn't know that it had this manual action on it, and Google will remove it. But really, if you're this is meant for people who are really trying to manipulate the system. So I know there are like gray areas. Like, let's say some SEO company went out of business. I don't know, if I bought their URL and redirected it to my site, I'm probably doing that for SEO reasons. I think the worst that would happen there is if this new, if Google's working on algorithmically trying to determine whether expired domains are passing signals to help my ranking, then they just neutralize them. Otherwise, they'd be penalizing sites like, they don't want to penalize sites by accident. Is Google even doing manual penalties for this anymore? It seems like this stuff is now baked into the algo. That's why I was like, I'm surprised that this was added to the rater guidelines, because the rater guidelines, usually when something's added, it means that they're going to start working more on something algorithmically. So who knows? I do think a lot of sites rank based on the authority of domains that they shouldn't be connected with, which leads us to this next section, site reputation abuse. You have probably heard this, and the reason why is I think it was September of last year, Google handed out a bunch of manual actions to newspaper sites. So for example, at least we think that they were manual actions. I don't know that any of these sites voluntarily shared that they got a manual action. But they had newspaper sites that had coupon subdomains, and the coupon subdomain was actually run by a third party. And the reason why they used the newspaper was because of the authority of the newspaper. Now, I'm of two minds about this, because I don't think the whole domain should be penalized for that. I could see that Google might want to reduce the signals that help the subdomain. But if a news company wants to make money, like, I don't know, that's a whole area for up for discussion, I suppose. Now, this is something. If you have questions about this, put them in the chat, or we can talk about it in the Q&A. I do see people are typing, because we could probably spend a full hour on this section. There are examples of things that are not considered site reputation abuse, like if you're using press release service. Don't use press releases for the links. Like many years ago, Matt Cutts said Google recognizes that. Can you share this highlighted doc? Yeah, I'll share that. Yeah, you know what? I'll make a note and I'll put that in the search bar after. I'll put it in the free area. Share the highlighted doc. Google did say they don't want to pass site-wide signals. Yeah. This line on first-party sites that's a branch out using freelance content is interesting for site reputation abuse. For freelance content, where is that? Oh, yeah. Examples of separate entities include users of that site, freelancers, white label services, and content by people not employed directly by the host site. That actually is. And then the last bullet. Well, I think, this is something we might need to come back to, because I feel like there's a lot in here. And I don't know if my webinar, I hope it doesn't cut off at the hour mark. If it does, I'll jump on live again. But could you say something, Marie, about a site that has sponsored content pages where, say, educational sites page to have special content on the pages, and they link out to their organization website. But there's nothing on this page to differentiate this from the non-sponsored content. Yeah, I mean, if you have sponsored content and it's not marked, like, it's just good practice to say that it's, oh, they pay to have it. Okay. Yeah, if you have sponsored content, you need to mark it as sponsored content. If you're not that, I mean, you could say, well, maybe Google wouldn't know, but if their systems can determine that, then that's something that would be a sign of trustworthiness that would be lacking. So I would definitely want to mark that as sponsored. Again, Google specifically issued manual actions for freelance authors. One of my clients was affected by this. Interesting. I'm trying to think of an example. Are they talking about parasite SEO? I don't really know. If you have thoughts on that, put it in the chat, because yeah, I think this is open to a lot of discussion. And again, I welcome anybody who wants to chat about this. We'll do that at the end. I'm just kind of worried I'm going to run out of time here, and we haven't got to the good stuff yet. We're starting though. Scaled content abuse. Creating an abundance of content with little effort or originality, with no editing or manual creation, is often the defining attribute of many spammy websites. Scaled content abuse is something that I predict is going to rock the internet. Now, there are many people who are creating copious amounts of content, sometimes with AI, sometimes probably still with AI, but it used to be something that people did even before AI could write articles. And the reason why you're doing it is because you're trying to improve topical authority. One of the ways, if you ask Gemini how to improve your EEAT and ChatGPT, one of the first things that they'll say is to create content surrounding your topics. You need to have a lot of content on your topics to show that you are an authority on your topics in most cases. And I did some work for Time, and they did an investigation into a site that was ranking that should not have, and it turns out that they had all sorts of scaled content. They had little clusters of topics with everything there is to know about each of those topics in multiple articles. And now they ended up getting, I believe, manually penalized. But Google is going to start going after sites that produce large amount of content. And I don't want to say things negative against people who are using this practice of building topical authority. I believe you can build topical authority by creating clusters of helpful content. But many people are creating clusters of AI-generated content, and it works really well. I have a theory, it's kind of a tin hat theory, so I wouldn't go spreading it, but I actually believe that Google let AI-generated content thrive on the internet for a while because then it helped to feed, not that they want to feed their AI with AI-generated content, but it helps fill in the gaps for where Google might have been lacking. And I think that a lot of black hat spammers have, flooded the internet with everything there is to know on their topic, and that's soon about to stop. Renee, Delish may publish 30 articles a day. It depends. Like, I think a lot of sites are publishing way too many articles. And the thing is, you publish like 100 articles and maybe one of them is a hit. And then, oh, well, at least that one is kind of like buying stocks, right? Like you win from the winners and then you just cut the losers loose. Except that if you have like 99 non-winners on your site, then those all contribute to your quality signals. So that practice may not be working so well. Now, if Delish publishes 30 articles a day and they're getting well received by people, I think they have a big enough audience that perhaps they are all high quality. I don't know. I haven't reviewed them. Do you think that migrating a part of your website to create a niche can also come under scaled content abuse, even if the content had good traffic on your main website? I mean, no, depending on the scale. If you I had this problem, and I don't know if I handled it right, where like my website is about SEO and I wanted to write stuff about AI that wasn't really in the realm of SEO. So I started a new website that's youknowai.com for AI. I still don't know if that was the right thing to do. Maybe I should have kept that all on my website. But I think that that's fine. If you are writing on a topic and then realize that, holy cow, like I have so much here, this should be its own website or its own subdomain, I think that's fine. However, it does talk here about multiple websites. Let's see here. We'll see that in a minute. And I see people getting still today manual actions for thin content, and the thin content manual actions are they're not very well explained, because sometimes it'll be for a website that has like 100 different websites on like the best dental school, the best medical receptionist school, the best, like all like hundreds of different websites that really should have been just one. And so it's really intent to manipulate. But like if you have a good reason, I think that that's fine. So let's go through here. Scaled content could be using AI as a low effort way to produce many pages that add to little to no value for website visitors. And I think this is important as compared to other pages on the same topic. Something that I would recommend that you do, and this is in the book, is that if you take your article that you've written and you say, if this was removed from the web, would people complain? Like, if this was removed from the web, what valuable information would no longer exist on the web? And I think that a lot of the time, a lot of us are writing articles that like are really just rehashing everything that was on the web. It's one of the reasons why I stopped publishing my free newsletter on my website, because the free newsletter was just rehashing what everybody already wrote, which is fine to do for a newsletter, except that Google doesn't want to rank something that's just a rehash of what people already wrote. Scraping feeds to generate pages. Probably most of you are not doing that, although I have seen that. Stitching and combining content from different web pages. Maybe that was my newsletter. I don't know. This is it. Creating multiple sites with the intent of hiding the scaled nature of the content. Again, if you have a few sites that are loosely related, I'm not worried. You're not going to get scaled content abuse. There are professionals who do this by the millions. That make so much money off of here's a tactic that works. Now let's make thousands of different variations of this website. And so that's something that hopefully Google will start working on soon. Okay, again, I think multiple sites part is coming from a single media company trying to create multiple sites and talking about the same topic. They're trying to occupy all the top positions. That might be as well too. I think that does still happen. Yeah, I don't think this makes little sense or no sense to a reader, but contains search keywords. I don't think it's a huge issue for most sites. So this is the part that I really, really want to focus on. Main content created with little to no effort, little to no originality, and little to no added value for website visitors. And this is to be called the lowest quality content. So originality, again, is the thing. But here's the thing that is, I think, the word of the day for this webinar, although I haven't mentioned it that much yet, but it should be one of the most important things, is paraphrased. The previous version of the Rater Guidelines used the word paraphrased or versions of it, paraphrasing. It was 2 or 3 times. It's in there 32 or 33 times now in this version. And so paraphrased is something that I see a lot. Let's say you have a website that focuses on seniors, and you want to write an article on diabetes, which is really something you shouldn't do anyways, because you're probably lacking the EEAT for that. But just for the sake of example, let's say you have that. You're going to go out and you're going to get you're not going to add anything new. You're just going to be taking everything that's already written on diabetes and rewriting it. And so if you are just paraphrasing what's already written, then that's a problem. Now, where I'm thinking, Renee, I'm going to call your site out because I don't know what to think about this. Renee has a recipe website, and she's got recipes that are unique, but you've also got a lot of content that's kind of like the same as what other people have written, you know? And it's really, really hard to look at that and go, well, you know, there's this little part that I added my personality to it. I added my, images to it. And I think what matters is, again, that information gain patent, that if a reader had, and this is a good exercise to do if you're not sure if your content would be considered paraphrased, is do a search for your main keyword and look at the first 5 results, whether it's an AI overview, whether it's a website, whether it's a SERP feature, people also ask, popular products carousel, and look at, maybe write down 3 things that a user's going to learn from that. Then open up your page and see, is there anything that is new that a reader would still want to read? Like, if they read all these other things, would they still want to take the time to read my content? Now, if you do have something that's unique and you're like, yeah, because my piece talks about how to do it in this way that nobody else talks about, then make that the main content. We're going to talk about filler content and moving the main content up to the top in a minute. And yeah, Renee said, you included a ton of people also ask questions in our content because we thought that was good to do. Let me talk about that. First of all, if you're using people also ask to get ideas for your content, it's not necessarily wrong to do that. I used to preach it as well, is, you take your topic and then you look at the people also ask results for ideas of what to include in that page. The problem is Google's already got content for those people also ask questions. So unless you can add something original, you're just paraphrasing what the web has said. And a large number of sites that were impacted by the helpful content system had this tactic. Why? Here's the thing. Renee, you said now it feels silly. It wasn't silly because this is how Google used to work, is pages that had a multitude of things that were related to the topic would look good to search engines. And so that used to work. And then I believe part of HCU was to make it so that sites that were optimized more for search engines than thinking of the users first. And I mean, it is helpful to the users to read related questions, but I think a lot of us did that more for the sake of ranking than for actually speaking to your audience. So paraphrased is something that is very important. Again, little to no effort, and you might go, well, how would Google know if effort's been put into content? It's possible Google doesn't know. It's just that people like content that's had effort put into it, and we know that Google's machine learning systems are trained on click signals, and so what people like is something that contributes to rankings. Let's see here. I think we're almost getting through it here. Yeah. Licensed or syndicated content is not considered copied. I think a lot of people talk about how it's not fair that this syndicated content on Yahoo News is ranking above the original source. If you syndicate your content, that's the risk that you take. And I think that happens not because Google couldn't figure out who the original source was. It's just that the systems have predicted that more people are going to click on it when it's on Yahoo News. So let's see here. Next, content on a web page may be paraphrased from another source. We will consider main content to be paraphrased if it contains content that is unoriginal and exists on other pages with different wording, organization, or phrasing. People can paraphrase content manually by rewriting the content from other sources using different words, and sometimes automated tools can be used as well. So this is something that is very important. Now, let's say you have like I can think of a number of sites, including some that I'm working with, that your entire blog is essentially paraphrased from the rest of the web. What do you do? It's very difficult because it's not like you can just cut that content and now all the rest of your site is good. We don't know whether, and Google recommends against getting rid of old content unless it really clearly was created just for SEO purposes only. There are some blogs where I do recommend that, where you can see like there's zero value, people never visited this content, and it was never useful to anyone, then that's a case where you might want to be getting rid of some of that old blog content. Is FAQ still important for ranking, or does it only provide credibility in helping with ranking? I think if I'm going to put FAQ, there's a few reasons. One is if it legitimately are the questions that my users want to know. So I'll put, FAQ on, I think I put FAQs on my December core update post, and they were not taken from any keyword research. They were the questions that were frequently asked of me. And so that's a good reason to put FAQ. If your motivation is to try to make your content look better to search engines, then no. However, sometimes you can still, with schema markup, I have still seen Google use FAQs in search features. So, I would still mark it up. Schema is a whole topic that could be a couple hours on its own as well. But I actually think FAQ was important for rankings, and Google emphasized marking it up so that we could teach their systems what the frequently asked questions about topics were. So yeah, I would use FAQs if it makes sense for your users. And here's some examples then of content that is copied or paraphrased. There's a lot of new stuff here. Laura, they say originality, but at the same time, Google wants consensus. So if you divert too much, you will not rank. How do you draw a line? Consensus matters mostly for YMYL content. I don't know if we'll get into consensus in here. It is in the workbook. Where it matters is, let's say I decided to start a blog on vaccines, on a controversial subject. And I write all of this stuff saying that vaccines don't work, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying that that's my opinion. I'm just saying, let's say I wanted to do that. That goes against the general scientific consensus. Now, does that mean that Google only wants things that go aligned with consensus? Like they're almost censoring what we can say? No. Unless you are a reputable agency that's known for, not agency, a reputable entity that's known and respected for talking on these topics, then if you have a lot of content that goes against consensus, then that can be seen as a sign of low quality. Now, in terms of like, let's say you're a recipe site and you're like, everybody says to make your bread with this, but I like to use this ingredient. That's totally fine. Like, that's not something that should cause problems. However, in the last version of the Rater guidelines, one of the things Google added was stuff about accuracy. I wrote an article about how does Google know whether content is accurate, and they don't. But I think they're getting there. And I think, actually, Renee, I'm going to pick on you again. I'm sorry. I know that you're okay with this. We looked up one of her recipes, and she had like different ingredients than the consensus. And then there were people in the comments saying, well, this recipe didn't work, which, like, it happens, So I think that Google wants to not necessarily to determine what's accurate or what's aligned with what everybody else says, but if you differ from what everybody else says, there has to kind of be some evidence, either externally or like on the comments on your page, that makes that difference worthy of reading, if that makes sense, right? Okay, so let's see here. Oh, and we talked about news. So these lines were already in the guidelines, the ones that aren't highlighted. Content copied from a changing source, such as a search results page or a news feed. So if you have, let's say you're a business and you have a section for news, that's fine to have on your website, but you might want to no index that content. If you have a large amount of your content is essentially just copied from news feeds, then that's not something that you want to have in Google search results. So if you think about it, like if I'm searching for news on that topic, I don't want to see your paraphrased version of the news. I want to kind of find the original source if that's possible. Okay, and then paraphrased more here. And now this is important. However, the lowest rating is required when all or almost all of the main content on the page is paraphrased. And so, it's not like if I have a little section, like when I write about a core update, I'm going to write some of the same stuff that Barry Schwartz writes. Like you have to cover the topic. But the main part of my article should be the part where I add value. When I wrote that December core update piece, I wrote about how to determine whether you were impacted, because that's something that I know from my experience. And so that's kind of the main content there. Okay, let's move on here. There's some instructions here on how quality raters are to figure out if stuff is copied or paraphrased. I'm going to skip over this. I will put this in the search bar for you though. If you strongly suspect the page you are evaluating is not the original source, consider it likely to be copied or paraphrased. All right. Now we got a bunch of examples. We still got some good stuff to get to. A ton of examples. Oh, yeah. So they made some changes in some of the examples where they added little to no originality and little to no added value for website visitors. It used to say little to no manual curation, which was interesting because when I made my newsletter, like I don't know that my newsletter was considered low quality content, but it was manually curated, but still wouldn't be something that you'd want to see on a search page. So let's find the next tidbit. Here's one example that was added. Let me see if I can share. I can share this tab. Yeah. This is a pretty obvious example of a page that is written by AI. If you, it's actually kind of funny to do a search on Google for as a large language model. Even if you search in Google Scholar, it's kind of scary how many times AI generated stuff is in there. So, if you have as a large language model written in your documents, then that's probably something you want to take out. But this article was one that they basically wrote just a bunch of stuff with AI in order to create a ton of scaled content. Also, it was rated lowest because it's a YMYL medical article and lacking EAT. Here's another example, and like when you look at these, they're all super obvious that they're not high quality. Like this might actually be one that was an expired domain too, New Zealand rabbit breeder. And then I thought, well, what's wrong with writing about like rabbits have ovaries, but this actually is not about rabbit ovaries. It's about ovarian cancer in people, which clearly like doesn't make sense to have on that website. And I don't think there's a lot to be learned here. Forgive me for skipping through this quickly, but I want to get to Q&A because we've been going forever. Let's see here. Expired domain abuse is another example where the site used to be rural schools and now is a gambling site. Site reputation abuse. I'm going to skip this. I want to get to the good stuff here. There's another scaled content. It was very similar to the previous one. All right, here we go. More main content is created with low effort, low originality, and low added value. This is very similar to before. Some examples of low effort is if you're just social media reposts with little additional comment or discussion. I see that all the time, and it's still, I saw in my Discover feed today, something about Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl, and I'm like, I already saw all that on social media, and the news article didn't add anything of value to it. And I think that we're going to be seeing a lot of news websites that are essentially just copying Reddit and social media not do well. Pages with content from other sources, repinned images. That's interesting. And you have a Taylor Swift article to open after reading this. There's really not much to know, Renee. Gosh, people are fascinated with her. And her team didn't win. So, it is what it is. What a boring game. Well, not a boring game. We won't talk Super Bowl. Okay. Best lists based on existing reviews and lists with little original content. Now, if you use the word best in your title tags, I would really caution, if those pages have seen drops in the last couple of years, get best out of there. Those pages, if you're talking about a product and you're using the word best, then you are judged under the product reviews algorithm, and that's something that is very, very strict. And so this is something that I think, we're going to be seeing. Again, if Google put it into the QRG, it means that they likely are trying to work on this algorithmically. So they really, really want people to be creating original content. Let's see here. Here we go. Filler. This is where we are at for filler. The main content of a page should support its purpose. Website owners and content creators should place the most helpful and essential main content near the top of the page so that visitors can immediately access it. I'm going to pause there because that's something I've been writing about for a long time, right? Okay, so the main content in the workbook, it starts off with understanding the purpose of the page. Your purpose, every page has a purpose, and your purpose might be, if it's a recipe site, is usually to help people make a recipe. If your purpose is to help people understand this Google update, which part of the page is the original content, the main content that people are trying to find. You don't want them to have to read through what is a core update? How do core updates happen? I'm guilty of this too. I often have written way too much. And so I'm going to read that again. The main content of a page should support its purpose. Website owners and content creators should place the most helpful and essential main content near the top of the page so visitors can immediately access it. I think if you're a recipe website, it's okay to have a jump to recipe button. But like, I understand. So I saw Casey Marquis, who works with a lot of recipe websites. He said they tested putting the recipe card at the top of the page, and it cut revenue by 78%. 78%. This is why I feel awful for recipe site owners, because, but then on the other hand, a lot of recipe sites, like, you got to scroll through ads and stuff that is really, really difficult, and that's not what I came to the page for. And so this is something that, we're going to see Google doing more to get people to find the content that they're looking for. Would you say this is also for universities, like best universities based on rankings data? That's a really good question. Let's see here. Yeah, I do, unless you're adding something of value. Now, the something of value could be like if you've made them into charts, if you've made them into helpful graphs, but if you're just collating data and putting it together in one place, I think that that's what Google's talking about. I don't know for certain though, and that's again something we might have to do several webinars on these different topics. TLDR section at the top, I think it could be that could be main content. Sometimes what I like to do is at least make it obvious that what the reader wants is on this page. And I don't think it has to be like right at the top. Like if you have an intro paragraph and it doesn't cover the main purpose of the page, like as long as the user can quickly find what they're coming there for. And this is part of Google's page experience guidelines as well, is the main content easy to find. A high quality page has the most helpful main content placed most prominently. Content that supports the page purpose without directly contributing to the primary goal can be included, but should be lower on the page in a less prominent position. For example, on recipe pages, the recipe itself and important supporting content directly related to the recipe should be prominently displayed near the top of the website. Website owners are going to be furious at Google. For good reason, but also I think the web is changing. Like I said, I use AI for all of my recipes now. And I think that eventually, we know that an AI version of search is coming soon. And I think that eventually that's what's going to happen. So unless you are you have an established reputation and people come to you specifically for your website, your recipes, I believe that it's going to be very difficult to be a recipe blogger. Yeah, Gag, and I find it interesting that they specifically mentioned recipe sites, and they had to know that this is going to cause problems because honestly, like there's no reason to publish a recipe site if 78% of your revenue is cut. I don't know if that's the case for everybody, but like I said, that's what Casey Marquis said. Sometimes main content includes filler, low effort content that adds little value and doesn't directly support the purpose of the page. We're going to see that in one of the examples here. Let's see here. This is all basically saying the same. Ads. This isn't specifically targeted at recipe sites, but it can be any site. Ads, it's okay to have ads on your page. Google knows that if we're going to create content for the web, a lot of people depend on ads. But ads that make it difficult for the user to efficiently access the information they want from this page should typically be given a low rating. There's stuff in here about interstitials as well. Although it says if the interstitial, like that's where you have like a big full, did that help if I did the rectangle there? If it covers the whole page, it says if it's easy to close, probably you don't need to call that low quality. Okay, we are almost through. Exaggerated or mildly misleading information about the website or content creator. We talked about that earlier, where websites were trying to fake their EAT. And so it's not enough to just say, I'm an expert, I've been doing this forever. You really, really need to have other people talking about you. And I would say that link building should return to what link building used to be many years ago. And that's creating stuff that's actually good enough to get people to link to, which is like, I know some of you are saying, well, that's virtually impossible. Nobody would link to my site. And this is where I question, you know, do you have original content that when we look at what exists on the rest of the web, that people still want to seek out your content as well? Anyone know what page is that bit about the best in the QRG? Oh, I'll have to find that after for you, Emer. If you can't find it, I'll help you there in a moment. Okay, let's see. I want to get some of these examples. This was, we won't go through all of these, a discussion page that's just summarizing a forum statement. Again, a lot of news sites will just summarize what was said on Reddit, and then that's their main article. Okay, here's the part that got people angry. A large quantity, this is a recipe set, I'm going to look at it in just a minute. A large quantity of prominent filler makes it difficult to find the helpful main content. Ads, supplemental content, and filler main content distract from the helpful main content. So what they're saying here is the jump to recipe button is hard to find. So that kind of makes me feel that having a jump to recipe link is something that is a good thing. And then there's a large amount of content that's not related to this as well. And you're going to see what it is in just a minute. Let's get this up here. Okay. Kind of sucks if you're in the QRG. I had a client once that had me reach out to Google to ask if they could get them out of the QRG. They're still in there as an example of low quality content. Okay, so here's about making butter beer. I think that's a pretty cool picture. Now, here's something I like to do. I don't know if this will work. Yeah, I'm going to look at it as if we were looking at it on mobile. Oh, it won't work as a PDF, unfortunately. Okay. What I like to do is see how many scrolls is it until I get to the thing that the user wanted to find. So if I did a search for butter beer, I probably want to know how to make it, you know. So I'm going to scroll down and I see here's their latest recipes. There is a jump to recipe button, but I think users expect to see it at the top. Here's some stuff about, this is filler. I'll definitely be whipping up a batch for my next marathon. You can make it 2 ways. You can add caramel. I mean, that tells me something. Does tell me the ingredients, but not the amounts. There's a picture, which like it might be helpful, but I still haven't got to the part that I really wanted. There's a call to action here. You know, there's other things you could do. I think the image is good. Like I wouldn't have called this a low quality page. Where can you find it? Now, at Universal Studios, and that's because I believe, yeah, they have affiliate links to purchase things at Universal Studios. There's nothing wrong with having affiliate links, but if it is taking prominence over the thing that the user came there for, then that's not good. And so we're still scrolling. Oh, it looks like this ad. You might have to close it to actually read that part of the content. And then like it just keeps going and going until there's more recipes. And then we get to the recipe card, which really is like standard practice. I think the recipe's here. There we go, on how to make it, which actually looks kind of yummy. So don't be mad at me if you're mad at this. This is Google's example. And if we go back here to what they say, they're like, a higher rating could be appropriate if the page were better organized, the recipe was prominently placed and easy to find, and there was less filler, supplemental content, and ads distracting from the helpful main content. Yeah, you're not mad at all, Renee. I knew that. Thank you. All right, and I think there's another example as well. Yeah, Google was running a test with some big recipe sites where they paid them directly and they showed the entire recipe in the SERPs. I do believe Google had some relationships with recipe sites. I don't know how you get that relationship where they would actually pay for recipe content that would be featured in the search results. So I don't know a lot of details about that though. Question from Renee. Oh, you're still typing. So does Google just want sites without ads to rank? It's not the ads that are the problem. It's when the ads are annoying. Let me go back to this recipe page. This ad here, now the page obviously isn't live, but there are many sites where, like recipe sites, where the ads get on top of what you're trying to see, and even some of them jump, and you know, like the ads are in the way of the user experience. But then, yeah, to make money with ads, you have to make it long. This is exactly the point. Like, I think Google is saying there's a ton of recipe sites that were only created to make money off of the web, which again, don't get upset at me, because I know some people are going to be upset with this because this is your livelihood. Like for many years, Google gave us this opportunity where we could create content and support that content with ads. There's a video that I shared in the search bar a while back with Sergey Brin talking to a bunch of people at a hackathon. And he said for many years, for 25 years, we had this great thing, I'm paraphrasing, but this great thing where we could give people search for free, provided by advertising, by the money for advertising. And I think that that's going to end. Now, AI will make ways to make new ads, but I think that the day of display ads that cover content and that require a long amount of scrolls are going to end as a revenue generating signal. And that's why I think that a lot of recipe sites are really going to struggle. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. We are almost done. What are your thoughts on all of the page one high-ranking affiliate marketing sites that were helpful being destroyed? I've seen examples of sites that were great even after this happened, but added a few affiliate links and then their site was put off Google. I personally haven't seen a case where the affiliate links are what caused a site to be removed. However, a lot of these helpful sites, if you look at them in conjunction with what already exists, they're not more helpful than those. And I've gotten in trouble for saying some of this, so I'm not going to pick out any particular site. But a lot of them, like if you look at, for example, a travel site, and maybe it's got original expertise, it's got original experience, you've actually taken your own photos, but also there's TripAdvisor that has 400 comments from real people there. And then there's some gigantic brand known for travel. And by the time you get to the article that has the original experience, that post, like, even though it's helpful in isolation, very few people chose to read it. So I really don't think Google's against affiliate links, as long as you have, and actually Google's got really good documentation on creating affiliate content. You need to have original and insightful content alongside that. Oh yeah, and Gagan's got a good point that Sundar Pichai in recent earning calls, they did talk about putting more ads in Gemini and the chatbot. It's probably not going to happen this year, he said, but ads will still be there. But I think much of how we do ads, we'll look back at ads today kind of like we look at the yellow pages. I think that agents will be ads. I think that instead of me advertising, I've got a new book, you should buy my book, I might advertise an agent that says, communicate with my agent about the helpful content system. And then that would be something that I would pay money for as an ad, and it would be useful to the user to have a chatbot that's been trained on my book. Like, I think that ads will change. Okay, let's go back to the rater guidelines. I thought there was another example that I wanted to share. Although, let's see, let's go all faster. And then we've kind of been doing Q&A all throughout. Well, I may have missed it. That's fine. It'll be in the book. So, okay, you know what? I think I'm going to end it there and end at least the presentation part here. I'll stop screen sharing and get back to talking with you guys. What do you think? Like, the rater guidelines are, like, I've never seen this many changes in the guidelines. That's why I was like, all right, I need to do an episode. And also I wanted to get back to podcast. I didn't know I'd do a 2-hour long episode. I see some of you are typing, so we'll just kind of babble, go, oh, you know what? Before we do that, let me get you the link in case you want to buy the book. And this will only be up for 48 hours. The book is $60, and this will get you 25% off. Although if you are a Search Bar Pro member that you pay the $42 a month, there's a new section that will be launching this week in the Search Bar called the Learning Hub, and all of my books will be in there, including my most recent SEO in the Gemini era, And I don't think the full course will be in there that I made, but components of it will as well. And right now, joining the search bar is $42 a month. We have a fantastic community. Many of you are here in the discussions. We are having twice monthly meetings now. We're going to talk about creating agents with Vertex AI, and we talk about all of the latest that's happening with AI and search. And they are such fantastic meetings, not like this with the chat, but everybody's here. We can all converse together, and they're really good. So as more information gets put in the search bar in the Learning Hub, then the price will go up. But if you jump in now at 42, then you maintain that price. The free book link to subscribers, that's going to be for just the Search Bar Pro members. And you know what, I'll probably do the discount for those who pay for the Marie's notes as well. So, okay, I can't help but think, to your point, that the web is changing. For example, perhaps recipe blogs won't rank on Google anymore because it isn't a good platform for recipe blogs. However, it may be better for discovery platforms like MSN, Google Discover, and even Pinterest or Facebook. I think Discover, I rarely see recipes on my Discover feed. That's interesting. I think if you have a really, really good, unique and insightful recipe, it could rank on Discover. And yeah, I mean, if you're having success on other platforms, then go for it. But I think you're right. I think search is becoming less and less. I mean, imagine, we didn't talk about Project Astra. Also, nobody told me that my hair was sticking up. We didn't talk about Project Astra, which is glasses that are coming with AI in it. So pretty soon, like, I'm going to open my fridge and I'm going to say, Gemini, what can we make in here? And the recipe is going to pop up like in front of my face. And then I can just ask questions about the recipe. Like, I'm not going to be going to websites in order to write recipe or to read recipes. Maybe search will be just for businesses. Yeah. And actually, what was that phrase from Liz Reed? She said recently in an interview something, I'm going to misquote her, but that search, Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it accessible to all, which is not the same as organizing websites. And I think that we're seeing a big shift. I knew that this shift was starting when the helpful content system started in 2022. And that's when I started focusing on trying to understand machine learning, because the entirety of search is changing. And we're going to see Google Lens change things, and other changes are coming to search. Again, there's this AI mode that's coming to search, and that's going to change how a lot of things work. So I don't want to be terrifying people, because I know, like, if you're in this call, you have a vested interest in understanding search and doing well. If you are currently doing well with search, unless you're actively like finding ways to trick Google, then I would say you're going to continue to do well. Like, keep doing what you're doing, focus on creating original and insightful content and things that are going to be helping your users. The helpful content guidance that Google published a little while back, they added something that said, do you have an existing or intended audience? I don't know why they said intended, because who creates content without an intended audience? But do you have an existing audience is important. Are you creating content for an audience that comes to you? Or are you creating content for search in the hopes that you get an audience? And it's not necessarily wrong to do that, but if that's your primary audience, then that window for creating content from search is very small, unless you can create something that is unique, original, and insightful. All right, we'll take a couple more questions, and then I think my battery's going to run out on my PC, or on my computer, so I'm going to have to shut her down soon. This was good, though. With that, are they saying search audience is disappearing? Well, in the earnings call, they actually said that there's more. Like, search is increasing year over year, and more people are using the AI features in search, which they do have data to show that. So I think a lot of websites are not needed, and I actually think that Google used us. I look back. Many years ago, there was a Matt Cutts video that really encouraged people to write content on niche subjects. He actually called them niche blogs. And, I think what Google needed was they wanted all of the information about all of the things so that we could build this, not we, that Google could build this AI. And so I think we all worked for Google in creating these websites. It's SEO is not dead. Websites are not dead, but a lot of types of websites are going to be really struggling, I think, in the months to come. A food blogger recovered from HCU, and among other changes, she removed every healthy word from her entire website. Is that something we should consider doing? Well, I'd have to see the situation, but sometimes, but that's more of a core update thing. If you have claims to health and you are lacking the credentials, then that's an EAT thing, and it can impact you with core updates. But if she was impacted by the September helpful content update, then that wasn't related to that. Sometimes if you make widespread changes across your site, it can result in some improvements, and what remains to see is if it sticks. So I don't know. I don't know that I would go, simply removing healthy from every post. I'd have to look into that more to give you more thoughts on that. With AI features added, do you think review or listicle websites have any purpose or room left for ranking? This is really interesting because if you ask ChatGPT search things, they rely heavily on listicle type articles. If you ask for who are the best SEOs, it always pulls up, and a lot of the time, like, it's even people who don't do SEO. It's like, oh, John Mueller and Barry Schwartz, and it's because it comes from lists. So those are to some extent necessary, at least for ChatGPT. I don't know about Gemini. But again, it all comes down to originality. If you're just saying, like, you have a guitar website and you're like, here's the top 10 guitars, like, unless that's data that comes from your store, or like if it's just stuff that you've gathered from around the web to say, like, here's the most purchased guitars this year, it might not be enough. Like, if there's enough people who are like, wow, that's so interesting, I want to click on that and read that, I guess that's good. And I saw this with there was another site that was impacted by HCU, and it was quite vocal about it, that was talking about gaming content, and a lot of the posts were, the top 10 PS5 games of the year. And like, that might be okay, but I don't know about you. Like, I don't go searching for the top 10 games. So I think some of that content, used to rank well. And I think that we're going to see it do less and less. I guess it's almost like if someone had non-search based audience, people who don't search for sites content, but seek it everywhere on socials and engage with it frequently. Again, I would really encourage you to, in the Radar guidelines, to do a search for known for, and it really is something that is the biggest component of EEAT. Well, trust probably is the biggest, but reputation for your topics is important. I think I'm going to end it here, guys, mostly because I see that my battery is about to die. So, wow, we did a lot of discussion here. I thoroughly enjoyed doing this. I have almost no voice left, I think. I can feel it going. I will, later this afternoon, put the highlighted version of the QRG in the free area of the search bar. If you have any questions about joining the paid areas, do reach out to me. And if you have any questions about the book as well, then reach out to me as well. I'm going to be doing more guides like this as well, and lots more stuff. I want to focus on talking to you, my audience, rather than doing more podcasts for other people, because boy, I love to chat about Google and about AI. So thanks so much for watching and being a part of this, and I wish you the best of luck with everything.